Hello everyone and welcome to This Nintendo Life. My name is NBZ. This is episode 52 and I am the Triforce of Wisdom. My friend here, Bally, joins me, the Triforce of Courage. How you doing, my friend?
I'm very good, NBZ. How was your Halloween?
It was good. It was, I didn't do anything because I did. I went and had some drinks before everyone else went out, and then I decided that I was going to go to bed early because I had an essay to do, which was great fun times.
Fun times.
But, you know, what are you going to do? Halloween, it's a scary time, but what's more scary is not handing in your essay on the date it's supposed to be handed in, so I took the smart option there. So.
You see, in Brussels, like Halloween isn't a thing in the slightest because it's one of those things that the UK has copied from the United States.
Right, exactly.
And so when the minority of like expat Brits start walking around the streets in like funny clothes, everyone just looks at you really funny, like you're actually mental.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Like,
It's really strange.
on any other day of the year, if people walked around like they do on Halloween, it would be viewed as them probably getting escaped from a mental home, and you'd be like, okay, why are you doing that? That's really strange. Yeah, it is a weird time. We saw lots of people out on the streets, but hey, it's over.
It's now the run up to the end of the year and Christmas.
It is. Oh, no more events to come, apart from if you're an American, you got that Thanksgiving thingamajig, but none of that nonsense over here.
And that shopping thing where everyone like murders each other.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Anyway, I mentioned at the start of the show, I'm the Triforce of Wisdom, you're the Triforce of Courage. We don't have a Triforce of Power, unfortunately. I think that would be resignated to our friend Ali T. But as he's not going to join us in our adventures in a Zelda video game.
He's the Triforce of Power.
Yeah, I don't know why, because I don't know, whatever. He's Ali T. He just
pretty
is.
evil.
He's pretty. I would characterize him as a Ganondorf-like figure. I would indeed. But
Definitely.
anyway, look, we couldn't talk about that video game. It's coming up. But before we talk about that one Zelda video game, how about you tell us what else we're going to talk about in the show, Bally?
So, like you said, we're going to talk an awful lot about Triforce Heroes. We've got some emails, and there was a Nintendo investors meeting where they talked a lot about the future and sort of what their plans are for unified account system and the mobile market, and lots of interesting news to talk about from that.
Yes, indeed. So we are going to dive deep when we get to that section, but we will now continue forward with our march into the newest Legend of Zelda game. Now, the last time, Bally, we talked about a new Legend of Zelda game. It was about 2 years ago, because that's when Link Between Worlds came out on 3DS. So here we are again, another 3DS Zelda, and this time we're playing it at the same time as one another. It's crazy. It's a co-op online Zelda. Where do you want to start here, Bally? What are your initial thoughts on Triforce Heroes?
Well, the first thing is the fact that it's co-op play is that I'm always waiting for you to play it and you're always waiting for me. So it feels like a very different game by the fact that you have to sit, you can't just pick it up and play it yourself and do whatever. I have to like get on Skype with you, and then we have to hook up with some other player to play with online, and then we have to hope they're good enough, and then it's all a bit of a rigmarole just to get the game going.
There are lots of caveats, yeah, I have to say. Like, before you actually get to the game itself and the playing of it, there are some steps, some hoops, maybe you could say, that you have to jump through. Now, if you're someone who isn't doing what we're doing and like being on Skype and everything, then you can kind of go into it with your lonesome and go with some random people. But I'm not sure that's like a great experience. I know you've done quite a bit of that.
Yeah,
You've played much more of this game than I have. Like on the off time, you were going for the bonus challenges and stuff with other people.
exactly. So the idea of the game where you're building up the materials that you collect from the levels is a great little idea. It's very sort of, RPG-esque, Monster Hunter-esque, whatever you want to call it. It's a bit of
Destiny-esque, I was saying on Twitter.
Destiny-esque. It's collecting things for missions you do. I think that's a great idea. I think the problem with it is that, for example, like you and me, so when I'm not connected online with you, MBZ, I was playing online with other random people, going back over missions I'd already done and doing the bonus missions in order to get maximum completion and to get items I wanted. But the problem is that it's randomized between what the players select, a bit like the way that the courses are selected in Mario Kart, for example. So it's not like majority automatically rules. It just means majority means you have a higher chance of playing that level. So you end up replaying levels you don't want to play, that you're just playing to get to the next one, and it's not ideal for collecting a specific material that you might need for a specific costume. It's just really frustrating in that sense. And for that simple reason, I'm initially I was quite keen on like going back through all the bonus missions, but now I'm really not keen to do it because it just seems like a frustrating waste of time because you're not doing all the levels you want to do initially.
Right, like it seems the only way that you're going to 100% this game is if you have a dedicated team of 3 people who are all on Skype together and who are all like, okay, we're going to systematically do this level, this bonus challenge, knock it out, and then the next one, and then the next one, and you have to have that dedication and that desire to do it. If you're going with randoms, like they can choose whatever they want. They could be a troll to you. Like there are a number of factors that go into the playing of all these bonus things, and as a result it kind of puts you off when it's kind of impossible to get right. So yeah, it's not something I've dug into at all, but I've much more enjoyed doing the stuff with you. So
One more thing mode that I've tried that you've not tried, MBZ, which is terrible, is the single player offline mode,
right.
where you can use 2 mannequins to swap between the 2 mannequins basically, and the 3 of you kind of get your way through the level. It's very, very slow. You have to manually move everyone. It's horrible. I have no idea why they have this mode in the game. I am so baffled by it because it is not fun at all. I would give, if I had to rate that out of 10, I'd give it like less than a 3 or something. It's really, really poorly. Um, it's not poorly implemented. It does what it says on the tin, but it just doesn't work. It's slow and terrible, and I
Right,
don't
because
really.
this game is fundamentally designed for 3 human players. When you
Yes.
have one person who has to micromanage everything at once, understandably that becomes fucking overwhelming with the stuff they put in front of you. And like, if you imagine playing some of the later levels we are now, especially the bosses in single player, sounds like a death wish. Like that sounds the worst
Yeah.
thing I've ever heard in my life. So yeah, I'd say steer clear of it. I just haven't touched it at all because I'd heard from people it's fucking terrible. Don't even waste your time with it. And I'm glad that I haven't wasted my time with it. I'm glad I have sunk time into proper stuff with you and just having a good time playing on the internet.
Yeah, and it's important to say that when I'm playing with you and when we're playing with someone who's decent and we're working our way through a brand new level, working our way through the levels, fighting the bosses, it's some of the most fun gameplay I've played this year. It's really, really solid co-op play. It's so well implemented, and it just works so well, and especially the boss battles, and perhaps we should talk more about those, but they are just so well designed because they're combining puzzles with action, and you have to be on top of what you're doing in both aspects. So you have to be on top of knowing how to puzzle your way through the boss, but at the same time it's throwing stuff at you, it's moving about. There's loads of different designs of the bosses that work so well in this game.
I think the fundamental thing about the bosses is like you need utmost coordination.
Mm.
I think the levels are fine for that stuff, and they ramp up in difficulty. I think like the early stuff is very simplistic, and I think people who like Giant Bomb were talking about how
Yeah.
oh yeah, it's very easy, you just totem and do very simple puzzles. Obviously, that's the baseline. That's where you start. It does start to ramp things up, but even from the beginning, I think the bosses are the most fun because they require you to try and stay calm in a situation where panic is like your first thought because you share this life. The whole life bar is shared between you, so you know you're fucking up if you're taking hits because that's the rest of the team who's paying for it. And you also have to figure out what the tick is while also like trying to communicate to each other, oh, I figured this out. And it's hard to do that when someone isn't on Skype with you. So the third player, most of the time in these, we are trying to talk together on Skype and figure things out, and then hopefully they will communicate and cooperate in the same way, but it's a struggle on some of those later ones especially. So.
Definitely. And we should say that we have now cleared the first 6 worlds.
Yes, we just beat
And
the boss of the sixth one, and let me tell you, that's one of the most difficult like things I've done in a long time. It's holy shit. The challenge is. Interestingly enough, a couple of weeks ago, or like earlier this week, there was a NeoGAF thread that went up, and it was like, what are the hardest bosses in Nintendo games that you've ever played? And I went on it, and the first page was just littered with people saying Triforce Heroes, Triforce Heroes, Triforce Heroes. And at this point in time, I wasn't too far. Like we played maybe the first couple of worlds, and I was like, yeah, it's fine, it's not too bad. But now I 100% understand what those people were talking about in that thread. Yeah, this is like some of the most challenging Zelda gameplay in years. It is on another level from Link Between Worlds, quite honestly.
at the same time as it's frustrating, I still think it's incredibly well designed. And we were just saying this, that when you do defeat a really tough boss, it's kind of a strange feeling you have because of the fact that it's so intrinsic in terms of cooperative play, even more so than a game like, I don't know, Trine 2 or something. I'd say it's far more intrinsic the way that you're all operating and acting as a three in this game. Because you're just hoping that your other teammates aren't cocking up and that you're pulling your weight. So it's not a case of just, oh, I'll pull my weight and we'll all get by. You really genuinely have to all pull your own weight. There are so few sections, especially amongst the bosses, where one player can just dictate. It really genuinely requires each person to know exactly what they're doing and when, and to like make, I don't know, say shoot the bow and arrow at the right time, or place that bomb, or hit them with the hammer at the right time. It's so intrinsically linked, the way you defeat bosses, that you're left at the end saying like, whoa, we did that together. Like, it's not just I did that, it's we did that, and it's a strange feeling.
It's like a sense of relief as opposed to a sense of satisfaction. It's very strange, but I do feel that like that is the strongest aspect of this game.
Definitely.
By far. The bosses are just, they're a visual spectacle as well. Like they change the camera angles at certain points and make it a different experience than what you've had before. And I think a lot of the levels do that, especially later on, with like some ramps and like some zoomed out camera angles and all this stuff, makes it stand out from Link Between Worlds, which is that static overhead view the whole time.
Yeah, and I also think that they could have just gone for the 8 dungeons, or however many dungeons there are in Link Between Worlds. I think it's 11 if you include the small ones. But they could have just taken the aesthetic from those 11 dungeons and said, right, here's 8 worlds, here are 8 of the dungeons from Link Between Worlds, and we'll just copy those sort of palettes, as it were. But they've really kind of gone above and beyond that, and they've created new worlds, like the Riverside, for example. Like, that's quite kind of a unique thing that they've created, and it's nice that there are these new worlds you're exploring and not just replicated from Link Between Worlds, even if the gameplay obviously is quite similar. Like, there is a lot more new stuff in terms of assets and art creation than I thought there would be.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a nice looking game. Like, it's aesthetically pleasing.
And sounds great. The music, like a whole new soundtrack and stuff, is really, really great soundtrack.
Yeah, you're really into the music in this game. I think it's good. What was it you were comparing it to earlier that you kept saying?
It's a lot of Celtic themes, and I was comparing
Right.
it with the Pixar movie Brave.
Yeah, I think like that initial theme that you get at the opening
Yeah.
screen is definitely like evokes that idea of Brave quite
Yeah,
a lot,
and
which
and
is
like
cool.
it's definitely the most Celtic sounding Zelda since Wind Waker, I'd say.
Yeah, totally is. I mean, it's Toon Link, right? So you gotta stick with those themes. I think another interesting aspect is a lot of the levels split the items into completely different ones. So
Yeah.
you'll each have a specific job to do, and as a result, like, you sometimes find that people become a crutch that you have to lean on, where you're in a situation that, okay, I can't really do anything here, and I'm kind of waiting on them, and I hope that they have a handle on the situation, they know what they need to do, and that can sometimes, create these situations that can be a little frustrating, that you have to wait and make sure they're doing
Yeah.
their job, but then it also places the pressure when it's your turn to be like, oh, okay, Yeah, I better get this right, otherwise it's not going to go too well, is it? So.
Yeah, and there have been moments where the two of us have been talking on Skype and the third player with us doesn't know what they're doing, and we're just ramming our fingers on the emoticon saying like, "You have to use your item, you have to go here," and we're just like, "Ugh," like, and then eventually it does work more often than not. It does sometimes take a few seconds, but and
I
then when
mean,
they
like, today we were playing that boss, and the guy picked me up and was just holding me forever and ever, and I was just jamming on the emoticon saying, fucking throw me! Throw me! Now! What the fuck are you doing? Like, this is absurd! This boss is, like, coming at us, we need to deal with him, and you are not, like, towing the company line right now.
yeah.
It's... That is one of my biggest complaints, is the fact that you cannot get yourself out of being totemed. Like, if someone picks you up, they are 100% in control of your destiny. If they want to throw you off a cliff, they can damn well do that. It'll hurt them in the process because they're part of your team, but they can do it if they like. And there is no way for you to get out of it. And there are certain situations where I just, like, put me down, and they won't. And it... Man.
I tell you what this game has made me realize
What?
is that 4 would have been too high.
Bally, do you really think so?
I really think so. Like, the number of times we're just like, oh, the wrong guy's in the middle of the totem, or he needs to be on top, or whatever. Like, it would have been just worse with 4.
It probably would have made it more complicated, you're right. Yeah, the whole totem thing, it's fine with 2 people. When it comes to 3, then it does get a little bit hairy. So adding an extra one would be a bit crazy.
And like that feeling when you're fighting these bosses in that intense moment, you're relying on even more people to like pull their weight and get it right. It's almost,
Yeah.
I can imagine it being just tougher. You know what I mean?
You know, I do find sometimes a little bit of trouble with, even with the 3D on, of judging the verticality of certain things,
Yeah.
like the height of the bats that we were trying to fight earlier on. Like, I couldn't quite tell.
And they keep changing heights as well.
Yeah, they keep going up and down, which is hard to deal with. And obviously there are other certain situations where you have to hit switches, and it's like, okay, do I need one person up here, or is it 2? Because I can't quite see the angle. And maybe that would have been fixed by, like, making a better camera angle for those situations, but I can understand why they would be constrained in certain aspects. So, yeah.
What do you think of the costumes?
They're interesting. It certainly seems like a lot of the costumes are built for people who are going to play through this game multiple
Yes, I
times. You know,
agree
like
entirely.
they are specifically positioned as hard to acquire because they require a lot of different materials, sometimes multiple materials, and sometimes rare materials that can only be found in one specific world. So if you really want the Goron suit, you need to go to the Fire World and you need to play through those levels enough times to the point at which by the end you finally get that rare item that you needed, and then you can get that suit. But that requires you, again, doing that repetitiveness of playing through it over and over and over. And that's why I was talking about Destiny and about how, like, the original version of that was such a grind for people that they continue to play the same scenarios again and again and again just for the promise of new guns, new loot. And that's basically the same loop that they've built into this game, which I'm not a fan of. I'll take the costumes I can get, but I think most of the time you can get around in this game without relying on them. Like, they're not a necessity. They're just kind of a bonus, and they make
Yeah.
certain things easier, but you can certainly do it without them, and they are not a required element.
I would say if you are willing to kind of dive on in and try the bonus levels, I think although it's a terrible system to get to the bonus level you want to get to, I actually think, and I completely agree that these bonus levels are arguably padding, but I do think they are quite well designed, and they do implement some interesting things where there are sort of time trial elements, or you have to manipulate this orb to this place, or you have to do the whole level with a certain number of hearts, or you have to pop balloons. Like, I think some of those are actually quite fun. Now I've only done the earlier world bonus missions, so I really don't fancy trying to do like a speed run of some of the later stuff that we've tried. But I do think they're all right. I think it's a nice thing for Nintendo to have implemented into this game, even if the means to getting to those bonus levels are terrible.
Yeah, look, it's stuff there for people if they want to keep playing it. Like, at least they feel like there's a sense of progression there, as opposed to just being like, oh yeah, you can just play the game again. You know, they've built in a progression system for people who really like it and who just want to keep playing it over and over. And it also helps perhaps extend the online community so that when someone picks up this game in like 3 months' time, there will hopefully still be people playing, so that if you want to jump into a random thing with, different people, you can still do that and not have it error out and say like, okay, no one's playing this game anymore. So maybe a bit of a lengthening of the lifespan, which is
Yeah,
pretty cool.
definitely. But I mean, we have said quite a lot of bad things about this game, but like we've already said, the core co-op gameplay is great, and I really love it. And I'm so glad that Zelda tried this out, because I think Four Swords did some interesting things. I've not played that game, but from what I've read and seen, it did some great things, and this is kind of evolving from that. And I'm glad that the series has taken this turn, even if it's only brief.
And it's also nice because it, as opposed to Four Swords, which was, I think, a bit more competitive, they really encourage you to cooperate with one another. And I think the majority of the time we have been matched up with random people who have been helpful and who have wanted to play the game properly and who have not been trolling us. Like, there are the occasions where things will happen and people will be dicks, but most of the time we've had good experiences, I think, with the people we've been matched with.
And you don't get like punished for DCing or anything. I mean, it is a bit of a rigmarole to get back into the lobby and stuff, but I mean,
I think that has to be my biggest complaint, is the way that they have formulated the menus and the getting back into playing online after you quit. Like, for example, if Bally and I jump into a match or a world or whatever, and this person is clearly like has a bad internet connection or is not cooperating, and I want to quit, it doesn't send myself and Bally back to the same lobby. It just fucking disconnects me from the whole thing. And that is illogical. That makes no sense whatsoever.
You have to start up your own room
right,
again.
I have to start rehosting the
in.
room.
Yeah.
It's just like, it slows it down. It takes much longer to get to the actual process of playing. It's a frustrating element that Nintendo clearly are known for being bad with online, and it's just trudging and poorly implemented. And I wish it had just been done better, because you're just clicking through the same dialogue and he tells you the same fucking thing every time. Like, why not just put it in a very simple format, easy to do menu, and just when you quit out of something, just put it back in a lobby where Bally and I are still in the same thing, and we can just get another person. And also, when basically, if you want to choose the different world you want to go to, that also has to be done once Bally has gotten in. Like, I can't choose that before we enter it, so overall, just not a good system at all. But once you're in it, that's,
Yeah,
that
and
doesn't matter anymore.
it's a shame, because I think the worlds, in terms of length and the way they're designed, are really like nicely bite-sized chunks, and like the levels don't take too long each. Obviously, when you die a lot, they do take quite a while, especially on the tougher bosses.
Yeah.
But like in general, we could get through like a world in well under an hour. Or whatever. Like, it was just quite fast paced. Really, like we've already said, amazingly well designed, but just really nice pacing of, hey, it's effectively just Zelda online dungeon mode, which I think is just awesome.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Absolutely is. Like, just dungeons are my favorite aspect of that series, and this is just Dungeons the game, basically. So it's very cool. One thing I would say as well, though, is when you get to the harder parts, it does start to... Like, the emoticon system at first, I was like, okay, this works. Like, it actually... Nintendo have implemented okay.
And it does early on. Genuinely really does work, I believe, early on.
Yeah, and it's simple enough early on that you can get those commands out and people will understand what you're talking about, but... Later on, stuff is so timing based and is so specific.
You need a sixth sense almost. It goes far beyond the emoticons.
Exactly, like, you really feel the need to be able to properly communicate with someone. And for me and Bally, like, that's fine. But when it comes down to the third person and we're talking to each other and we know what we have to execute on, but we can't tell them, it's just like the one world with the platforms that swing back and forth, the pendulum platforms, is goddamn fucking infuriating because you can't communicate with that third person to say, okay, like 3, 2, 1, and then let's go and let's get the timing right. And there's no ability to communicate that. And that is like, you really feel the lack of the voice chat there. So I have to recommend, if you're going to play this game, you'll probably have fun without talking with other people, but really try and find someone on Skype, and that is the best way to experience it. So,
yeah, definitely. And I look forward to us taking on these final 2 worlds, MBZ, and letting everyone find out next time how we got on. Because
yeah, and I'm sure there'll be much more rage from myself.
I think I think you could. I think there's some fruity language to come from you still.
Yeah, it's like, I was thinking about this, and there are only a couple of games which make me just fucking infuriated. Like, I'm not actually angry. Like, afterwards I'm fine. Like, I'm not actually angry, but you
have a short fuse of when a game is not ticking your boxes.
Right, it's Smash Brothers where I get very passionate and very heated when we're playing.
And the worst thing is I'm at the other end of Skype just winning or something. It's like,
yeah. And I'm just like, just seething. And also this game, mainly me shouting at the person who we're with because they, like, either they're terrible and they're fucking up or they're just not doing what I want them to do. I have been giving it some welly.
But the best bit is you get really angry and you're like, Pally, just pick them up, and I pick them up, and then you pick me up, and then you just try and charge through the level, and you just end up like falling off sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's just it takes a lot of patience and calmness and cooperation. Like, this is a real good team building game.
Absolutely. Right, well, anyway, we'll finish that up hopefully for next time. But I feel like this game has been a little bit unfairly treated in the press. Like, it's got kind of middling reviews and kind of poor reviews from some sites.
Yeah.
But when it's
comes down to it, better than that. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. When it comes down to it, it's a really fun experience. So we recommend it here. I think it's a pretty good game.
It gets better and better is the other thing.
Yeah. Other than that, Bally, you've been playing a little bit of other stuff, but not anything you want to talk about this time.
Yeah, a bit of Rayman Legends, but I'm going to probably finish that up for next time.
Sweet. I have been doing a lot of work, but I also got in a bit of a small game. I've been playing some Luftrausers, which, Bally, if you'll remember last year's Giant Bomb Game of the Year discussions during the music section, when they were talking about Tropical Freeze.
Your favourite aspect of a game.
Yeah. They gave the award, I believe, to Luftrausers, which is a small indie game from a studio called Lordnbz. I think they did a game called Ridiculous Fishing that was on mobile. That might be wrong.
Knowledge.
Might be another studio. I know the guy who's in charge of it is Rami Ismail, who they're working on a game in early access right now called Nuclear Throne, and he's been on Giant Bomb a few times. He's a really interesting guy. Like, he travels around a lot, and he's from the Netherlands as well, which is cool because I used to live there. So anyway, this game is it's 2D. I wouldn't call it a vertical shooter or a horizontal shooter. It's like a single screen shooter in the sense that you're this little ship and you can control yourself in the air with a vertical thrust and kind of spinning yourself around, and planes and boats and stuff will appear on the screen and you just have to kill as many as you can. And it's basically a high score game, essentially. But it's also got a lot of roguelike elements in the sense that you build up your score and you level up and you'll be able to unlock new equipment. So you'll get like a laser beam instead of your standard shooter, and then you'll get a chassis for your ship which can take more hits. And it's really just a Twitch like satisfying arcadey experience, but it always encourages you to keep playing because of that leveling mechanic in that system. And yeah, I've been really enjoying it so far. It's very kind of minimalist in its aesthetic. It's got this kind of beige and black color scheme going on, and yeah, you take a little bit of time to get used to the controls, kind of like Ollie Ollie, where it's like, you know, you'll build up and eventually you'll hit a point where you're like, okay, I really know how this controls now and I feel in the zone. And I think I've just about hit that point with it. So I'm really enjoying it. It's kind of a short burst thing. When I want to just play something for 5 minutes, I'll just pick it up quickly, do a couple rounds, and yeah, I'm really digging it. So that's Luftrausers. I'm playing on Steam. I think it's on PlayStation. I can't remember what else it's on. But yeah, it's cool. It's really cool. So check that out if you're interested. Otherwise, that is pretty much going to be it for this segment. We'll be back in just a little bit with the next one, which includes some of your emails. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Turn the page, breaking through your crazy maze, like a laser beam, my eyes on you. Watch me rule the night away. Watch me save the day. Feel my storm is getting close, heading your way.
Triforce. 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 Triforce.
Welcome back to the show. It is time for some emails. But before we read the first email, we're getting low on the emails again, MBZ. So
The bag's empty.
it's getting empty, and you know,
Fill her up, son. Fill her up.
got to fill it up for Christmas.
Exactly. Where's Sander? He needs to get on
Get his
board on the
sack
TNL
filled up.
podcast.
Yeah. Next special guest.
He will be. Don't worry about it. We've got him booked in already for Christmas. He'll be our special guest.
The email address is thisnintendolife@gmail.com. Thisnintendolife@gmail.com. Lots of news about it at the moment, so I'm sure people will have questions about that. So
Totally.
send them in. Our first question is from Alex. Dear MBZ and Bally, one of the news stories that has been circulating recently is that it looks as if there will not be a new mainline Pokemon game released this year. I think we can all agree that this is probably a good thing, but do you think there are any broader implications? Are Nintendo and the Pokemon Company taking a break to avoid franchise fatigue, or do you think this marks the beginning of Pokemon's twilight years and the rise of the Yokai Watch era? Thanks, Alex. And on Twitter, Alex is @AtariAlex.
Well, Valley, is it doom and gloom? Has Pokemon breathed its final breath? Can we finally put a nail in the coffin?
No, because Pokemon sells amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Pokemon sells fucking fantastically all the time. It's interesting that they didn't put out a mainline Pokemon game this year. There could be a few reasons as to that, and we can speculate it. One, maybe they did want to give Yokai Watch a little bit of space to breathe. I'm not sure how well it's going to do over here. It does depend on their marketing campaign and how much they push that to the Nickelodeon crowd, and whether or not it gets, in and out with every merchandising opportunity possible. I think they started the anime quite recently, so that's something that's happening, and obviously, the watch and all the stuff associated with it could be big in the toy space coming this Christmas. But we won't probably know about that until that comes. But yes, they are giving them space for Yokai Watch maybe, but it's also potential that maybe they are holding off on a new Pokemon game because it could be a potential title that could be a strong start for Nintendo's next handheld. Bally, what do you think about that?
I think it's strange that a Pokemon game didn't come out because I believe we're due Pokemon Z.
Or something along those lines.
Or something along
X2,
those.
Y2, because they did Black and White 2.
Z.
Who knows?
Pokemon A, I don't know.
Pokemon A! Yeah,
Pokemon
okay.
A.
Prediction here, Valley. Next year, Pokemon A.
It's the
We're just going to go through the alphabet.
No,
Start at the
it's
beginning.
not. It's the Canadian Pokemon.
Oh! Pokemon A.
Pokemon A.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the third game in whatever X and Y become, I thought it's probably due to be the next one. So you'd think that turnaround on a game like that isn't necessarily particularly complicated, or it's quite easy to churn out, you know. But I do completely agree that imagine if the NX launched with a Pokemon game, like the possibilities would be incredible. Like that is just the most awesome thing. The idea.
It's a strong proposition, really, because if we think about our discussion last time and the potential of maybe NX being a handheld component that launches end of 2016, there is one surefire way to get a handheld off to a blazing start, and that is a new Pokemon game. Now, obviously, I think that there probably is going to be another 3DS game. They'd be stupid to ignore the install base of over 50 million that they have on 3DS right now. They have people invested there, and they will sell a good amount of copies if they put out a Z or a third tier, whatever they're going to do. I think that maybe that's something that could come next summer, maybe in the lull, a point like that. And at the same time, they could have split off a separate team, or had a smaller team working on this third kind of prong, and are actually working on the 7th gen to hopefully launch with NX if possible. That would be a little crazy to do 2 Pokemon games in 1 year, which, if we're going by that theory, then maybe NX is a 2017 thing, and they're kind of delaying it to have a good software launch.
I am confident that some executive has just said, let's just let it breathe. Let's just calm down, because it has been so consistent over recent years.
I mean, I think since 2009 or 8, if I'm not wrong, there has been a core Pokemon game every year. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a new generation, right? But it means
Core as
a
in
remake.
The adventure RPG style handheld game.
Right, the original style of Pokemon
Yes.
game. So, yeah, either it be a remake, or it be a third version of a game, or whatever. They have consistently put one out every single year since then. And this is the first year in a very long time there has been nothing. So it's interesting.
I'm not confident that Yokai Watch had an effect on the Pokemon Company's plans, to be honest.
No, I doubt it did. I think it's a happy coincidence, perhaps,
Yeah.
that they can kind of focus their marketing efforts on that instead. Because I do believe that if a Pokemon game was kind of competing with that, because it really is in the Pokemon slot, like it's the November period for North America, that's usually when they put out that game. I think that's when Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire came out last year. That is the time when they're ramping up the Pokemon machine. But having this new franchise that is similar to it and is probably targeting a lot of the same people, probably a younger audience in the case of this, but definitely a market that they are having their bases covered by not having a Pokemon game. So.
But is it the Twilight years? I really don't think so. I think
no, absolutely not. Look, Pokemon is a juggernaut. It is one of Nintendo's most profitable franchises. It has so much recognition, and for something that we thought would fade away a long time ago, has just got legs. It has legs, and people do not stop playing that thing. And yeah, it's going to come back, and I'm sure that there will be more to come. So.
Our next email is from Zvari from Kansas. Dear MBZ and Bally, I recently upgraded to the new 3DS XL, which for some reason got me thinking about what Nintendo's next handheld will be. The biggest question to me is, will it still have 2 screens? While I find having 2 screens to be useful in many DS and 3DS games, I'm not sure if Nintendo wants to release another system that is so similar to the DS. This also raises the question of backwards compatibility, because if the next handheld only has 1 screen, playing DS and 3DS games will be an issue. Anyway, what are your thoughts about Nintendo's next handheld? And do you think that it will have 2 screens? Do you have any other ideas for it? Keep up the great podcast, guys.
Well, this kind of segues nicely from the last question, actually. So everyone's speculating right now, Valley, obviously, that NX is going to be this platform that has multiple devices, and there will be a handheld component.
I hadn't heard.
Oh, no, yeah. No one's talking about
Yeah.
it. It's an idea I came up with all on my own,
Yep.
I'll have you know. But Zvari brings up a very good point. Backwards compatibility has, for, I think I can say, the entirety of the lifespan of Nintendo's handhelds, been a consistent thing, right? Every system that comes after another has the ability to play stuff from the previous
There have
one.
been a couple of cock-ups, you might call them. Not cock-ups, but...
What do you mean by the
So, obviously, Game Boy Color... I guess Game Boy Color could play Game Boy games. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to
Yeah.
say there were some models of the... for example, the DS to the DSi. Like, it
Right,
cut out
yes,
the
yeah.
Game Boy. That was obviously one step forward, going beyond backwards compatibility. I'm sure there's another one. What am I trying to
There
think
might
of?
be some weird ones in
Yeah.
there, but for the most part, though, it
Definitely.
has been a consistent thing, right?
Yeah.
So if we are all buying into this conspiracy theory or whatever that the NX is going to be this handheld component, what does that mean for the form factor of the new handheld, right? Because that's something I just haven't really thought about. Is like, yeah, they're probably going to break away from the two-screen thing, and they kind of, I feel like they've run that course. You know,
Yeah.
that has been done, and I think they need to move on. But then it does raise the problem of, wait, what are we going to do about this library? Because there is a huge, I mean, DS is an enormous library of games. 3DS, still pretty sizable, but nothing compared to its predecessor. What do they do when it comes to this? I think obviously we see signs of the virtual console with Wii U, which is not the best way to play it, but a solution. Do you think some kind of solution like the virtual console and Wii U is what they're going to be trying to use with backwards compatibility here?
I think that if we're assuming the NX is effectively similar to the Wii U, but you can walk about with the gamepad, which I don't think there's many reasons why it might not be something similar to that. I think that DS backwards compatibility is definitely possible. I actually am confident. I'd put money on this bet right now. Actually, is that I don't think. I think the 3DS only had two screens for backwards compatibility. And
Yeah,
that,
very true.
And that I think they would have been happy to break away from the two screens, because look at the way they used the dual screens on 3DS games versus DS games. The number of 3DS games you use the touchscreen on is so minimal, and the vast majority are holding your 3DS with two hands, whereas you look at the DS and so many of the games are designed around holding the DS with one hand and using the stylus. So
Or even like flipping it for the book style.
yeah,
and things like
exactly.
that.
So I do think backwards compatibility is incredibly important to Nintendo, and especially, like you said, for the handhelds. So I think that they will have backwards compatibility for DS and 3DS in the form that we just said before.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think of, like, what is the size of this thing going to be? You know, like the Wii U gamepad is pretty enormous if it were to be a standalone component. So you would think that it's going to have a smaller screen, it's going to have a smaller form factor, but probably will keep the same layout in terms of button inputs and everything. So it would have to have two shoulder buttons, a trigger, and the bumper. So it's weird. Like, is it going to be a Vita-sized thing? Will it still use circle pads? What do you think on those fronts?
It's really hard to say, and like thinking about how you would transform a gamepad. I mean, as it is, of course, it isn't very portable. But you kind of think to yourself, if it was smaller and sleeker, would it be so comfortable to play, in your home, linked to the home console part? Or because part
Well, if it's you playing stuff, see, that's the thing. Like, I don't think you're going to have a link where you're using this handheld as a controller. I think your home console will have its own controller, and you'll play these experiences separately from one another.
Okay.
So I'm not sure that
Yeah.
that's
No, fair
necessarily
enough.
a concern.
Yeah, no, that could work.
Yeah, it's a hard time to speculate. I definitely think the 3D is going to be dropped from
Yes.
whatever it is, which is very sad because we're both big fans of 3D on 3DS, and I think it adds a visual fidelity to the games that I don't think they get otherwise. You know, the 3DS games look okay without it turned on, but for me, it's like the HD upgrade.
Exactly.
You know?
It's almost tricking your eyes into thinking it's high resolution when it's not.
Yes, yeah.
So I think, personally, I don't think dropping the 3D will be a massive deal as long as they improve the resolution, which I do think they will do, because Nintendo have consistently done that.
Oh yeah, and I think they absolutely have to. And if we're talking about games running alongside or on both systems, it would have to be a beefier piece of hardware. Like it would have to run stuff, not necessarily the same settings as a console, but like in a similar fashion to how that works. So, yeah, I mean, look, the questions are open. It's open season, Bally, for speculation on this stuff. And I guess
the way that it's so strange, like the way that there became this established agreement between Nintendo fans that yes, it was going to be a handheld linked to a home console. It felt like that was already an entrenched idea before Nintendo said anything.
Yeah,
it's really weird.
It is weird. It's because I think it came from them talking about their fusion of their handheld and console divisions, which happened, I think, last year, and also people just speculating that, hey, 3DS is about time to be refreshed. Wii U is weird because it's been so unsuccessful that it kind of also needs to be refreshed. So we're at this strange junction where never before have the handheld and consoles lined up to come out at the same time as one another, because they're always kind of lagging behind or ahead by a couple of years or so. And so it is kind of this golden moment for Nintendo to say, right, let's wipe the slate clean and let's do them both at the same time.
Yes.
And, you know, now they've kind of confirmed that to some degree. There's the Wall Street Journal article which kind of speculates on that, and everyone talking about the shared architecture makes you think this is the way they're going to go. But I don't know, the question of all the backwards compatibility stuff is still one that is interesting, and I guess we'll see.
Our final email this week is from Paul from Texas. Hey Bally MBZ, while listening to your latest podcast, I heard your guys' feedback on the lack of options for searching for levels in Super Mario Maker. As someone who works in software, I want to talk about each of the options you guys mentioned and what I, as an outsider, think about the likelihood of these coming based on complexity to build. I will try to keep as much technical talk as I can out of this.
That's good for you, Bally.
Oh, I hate my technical talk. Search by name of level is something that, given the potential complexity, I think they may skip entirely. Have you ever used a text-based search and thought, why isn't this getting the result I know exists? I think that Super Mario Maker levels would frequently have that problem, with people misremembering or misreading the title. Another challenge is that names of levels are UTF-8 compatible, e.g. non-Roman characters such as kanji, which makes cross-local search trickier and less predictable or useful, since there's already this precise ID-based method for looking up levels. They may not see any value in doing the hard work here. Search for Miiverse user is one that I imagine will come before the end of the year. They probably skip this at first to avoid lookups across systems in order to make a query work. Unless their identity system is in worse shambles than we know, I doubt this will be a problem. List of your Miiverse friends, I can't understand how they missed this one. Seems like it will come this year. I think that was all of them you guys mentioned. Love the show. Paul.
Wow, okay, well that's a very interesting look into the technical end of Nintendo potentially implementing all this stuff. So it seems, Bally, that it's hard to implement a system where you search by the name of a level, which I thought, hey, that's easy, right? You just type in Metroid and it brings up Metroid things, but I don't know, maybe it is tough. I feel like there are big websites where they have search engines that just don't work. Like IGN is a huge one, where it's like, try and search for something on IGN is just a fucking nightmare. You're better off going to Google and using their stuff, 'cause it's just much better.
I think we get so used to Google that we assume search engines are normal, when really Google spend a lot of money and research and all that to, make their search engine the best in the world.
Exactly. That's why they rule the roost, apparently.
Nintendo and Google should do a deal.
Oh, totally. Yeah, Google
work.
should make Mario Maker implementation in everything.
Hey, they've got Mercedes cars and Mario Kart, so why not?
Look, it's not outside the realm of possibility.
No.
And say that. Yeah, but it's interesting. I think maybe use this as a jumping off point to talk a little bit about the Mario Maker update that's coming up, which seems like a fun thing, and I don't think we'll have another place to talk about it. So, yeah, what do you think about that stuff, Bally? It's stuff that kind of needed to happen.
I couldn't be more happy with the update. I mean, obviously the update doesn't really implement any of the things that Paul's talked about, which I do think maybe is a shame because I definitely think that there needs to be a better framework of searching for levels, or like the Miiverse friends. I think that really is a really
Yeah, he said he can't understand how they missed out, like just
precisely.
adding your Miiverse friends into the game.
Yeah. So we have the technical know-how on the side of why didn't you do that? So why not? So
Yeah, and this is the first major update. Like, they're supposed to be addressing the most common complaints. Like, that's one of the most common complaints.
yeah.
And there's nothing on it still,
But
apparently.
although that's a shame that they've not improved that, I think the couple of improvements they had. Well, there's 5 improvements. There's some other funny
Yeah,
things. But
well, I mean, one of them is like the Nat game,
Yeah.
but like a harder version
yeah,
of it,
yeah.
which is like, I don't
Like,
even
big
play that thing in the
deal.
first
Da, da,
place.
da. Look, it's so like retro great. But yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think the ability to put a flower or a mushroom inside a question block, and depending on the size of Mario affecting what comes out of the question block, is fantastic. That is just like the real games, which is perfect, and is a really cool little thing you can stick into your levels that'll really add an extra dimension to them. And then of course the checkpoint system that they're adding is perfect. It's what everyone wanted. There are so many levels where you end up playing the first half of the level that might be a lot easier than the second half, and you just think, what is the point? I just want to keep. The second you die in Mario Maker, or any 2D platformer for that matter, you want to get back to that point you died at as quickly as possible. And
Right, absolutely.
checkpoints are just Mario's version of doing that.
Yeah, oh man, that's going to make my Metroid level so much more playable, I think.
Yeah.
Like, having a checkpoint at that one point after the thwomps means that there's a tough section coming up, but it's right where you start back again. So it's just like, it makes it a more enjoyable experience overall, less frustration. I'm really looking forward to this. Like, it's a sort of thing where I kind of stepped away from Mario Maker for a while, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to get back to it. I want to make more levels, but I really want Nintendo to put out a patch or something to, like, put these improvements in. And it got announced. I'm like, oh, thank God. Because, like, I
Yeah.
really want to make long, complex, interesting levels, but the fear with that is, like, most people will just get frustrated and annoyed and not persevere because of the lack of checkpoints. And having them is so good.
And I barely scratched the surface of Mario Maker. I mean, even though I invested, I don't know, 10, 11 hours into that game, I only made the one level, like I've said before, and I really want to go back and really try to make some really unusual, quirky levels. And this update is just like a great encouragement to do that. And I really want to invest a lot more time in that game before, Game of the Year, the end of the year. And I think it's almost like Nintendo knew that, Game of the Year things were coming up on different
Right.
websites, and they're like, "Oh, we better do the update before Game of the Year so it can get pushed up," And
Yeah,
and
yeah.
those are two really simple implementations that will really change the game for the better.
No, totally. I'm also curious with the Mushroom Fireflower thing, whether that would apply to other items. So, like,
I'm
if
sure
you
it
wanted
will.
the cape or something, or the raccoon tail or whatever, Tanuki tail, you would be able to put mushrooms on those and have it work in the same way. I'm interested. I hope they do that, because if it's just the Fireflower, it may be a little bit short-sighted.
Yes,
But
that would
yeah.
be that wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility of
No,
annoying
totally
things
not.
Nintendo have done.
Absolutely, but I don't know. It's a weird one. Yeah, it's good stuff, and it's interesting that they utilize the current tile set to implement these things.
Yeah.
Like, there's no extra box for the flag, for the checkpoint flag. You just have to shake the arrow, like the arrow sign, which I think is a smart thing, because there are a lot of objects in that game that don't do anything if you shake them, and so adding kind of that ability is smart, because it means you don't have to mess with the UI. You just add the functionality to something that already exists within it. So, yeah. Very good.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've played so far, I absolutely love it, and I really look forward to going back to it. And
They also were talking about a bit of event levels and Nintendo made levels. So far, apparently, what they're going to have in that section for the event stuff is, I think Facebook made a level, or like they went to Facebook and got their employees to make some stuff. So I think they're going to put that up there. And also, there's some levels from PAX or something like that. And so it's a cool way of being like, if Nintendo have an event and they're live streaming it or whatever, and they want to put those levels in a place that everyone can easily access, like, there you go. You have the ability to do that. And apparently they're also going to, maybe partner with some other people to bring levels to the official section, which is where, like, Nintendo-made levels or, like, levels by different developers could go. So, yeah, I'm very excited for the future of that game. Like, I was maybe worried that I would play it for a bit and fall off, and I think this is going to be much more of an evergreen title, and it is just getting better and better.
I really
Mario
agree.
Maker.
I think it's something we will come back to in years and years' time and think, hey, we've not done this in a while. Let's each make a super hard level and challenge each other, and have a great time. Like, it's just so refreshing, and it's pretty impressive. It's mental.
We should try and do that. We should try and make each
I am
other
going.
levels
Yeah, I am
and
going
see
to
who's
work
can
on
beat
something.
each other's first. That'll be a fun thing to do.
So you have 72 hours.
Oh dear, reckoning begins.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is something that we'll do in the future, hopefully, and we'll talk about on the podcast. But I think that's it for emails, right, Bally?
It is indeed. But again, the email address is thisnintendolife@gmail.com. Please send in your emails.
We need your emails. Give us your emails, please. Emails. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this section. We will be back in a little moment. We'll be talking about a bunch of different things that came out of a Nintendo investor meeting, including their mobile game. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Alright everyone, welcome back to the third and final segment of the show. And this week, Bally, bit of news happened. A little bit of investor meeting happened in Japan. Nintendo spilled the beans on a bit of their plans for the future. So where do we want to start? We've got a few things here. We got their mobile thing with Miitomo, Shigeru Miitomo, as we have named it.
Clouds.
We got clouds, save data. We got Nintendo accounts and Club Nintendo replacement. Do you think we should start at the mobile app? I think that's the one that's the big important one, right?
That's the biggest news, I think, maybe.
Alright, so Nintendo unveiled their first mobile project. And I'm going to call it a project because I feel like calling it a game is maybe somewhat of a misnomer because of the nature of it. So this app, should we say, is called Miitomo, and it's kind of a combining of obviously the word Mi, which is Nintendo's avatar system, and Tomo, which is, I think it means friend in Japan. It's in obviously Tomodachi Life, like that idea of like friendship or whatever. So it's this kind of social app that is going to let people talk to one another, but not actually, because it's going to automatically send things to you from other people. It's weird, but what's your understanding of it so far?
It almost reminded me a bit of like the Everybody Votes channel. Like I believe there's elements where you ask people questions, or
Yeah.
and you like put your question out there and people reply and it's interactive and it's with your me. I think in general I'm really happy with it because I'm not very excited about it, and that's what I was hoping this
Right.
mobile app would be. I didn't want a game. I didn't want a gamery game on the iPhone or the iOS or whatever that would appeal to me and sell horrendously amongst the mobile market. So I accept that they've gone for a game that won't appeal to me, that will sell really well to a mobile market, you would hope, and doesn't sour one of the core IPs like Metroid, Zelda, or Mario.
Yeah, it's definitely them going for a blue ocean strategy like they did with Wii, and I think it is interesting that a lot of people have reacted very negatively to this. I was at first kind of befuddled more than anything. I was very confused. I was like, okay, it's kind of weird, isn't it, that they would choose this? But then you think about it, and it's like that crowd that they had with the Wii have some associations with Nintendo, the main one being Wii Sports. And as
Yes.
such, probably the thing that is most recognizable to them is that Mii character, which means that like if you're going towards this market, which is now invested in iPhones and apps and all this sort of stuff, immediately that recognition is there. Like from a few years ago, they were like, oh, wait a second. That's the thing on the Wii, and I kind of enjoyed that back then, and this is this new interesting thing. So it kind of, obviously for the core gamer, it's nothing that we really care about, but for a wider audience, it's actually kind of genius on their part that they're using the Mii as that inroad. And especially if you think nowadays is like, Mario as a brand is probably not as strong as it was, and not as many kids know about it. Minecraft is a much bigger entity at this point, and I think the Mii is maybe something that they can leverage a bit more in this case.
Yeah, I think the Mii is one of the most recognizable franchises of the last 10 years in video games, and it is that character that will appeal to the wider market, and that's really exciting. And I think it's quite hypocritical of fans to be like, "Oh, this game looks terrible," because it's like, well, it's not for you. It's not. It's kind of.
Yeah.
It's not. Everyone was so skeptical initially of having mobile games, including the people who are complaining about how bad this game looks towards them. And it's just like, well, you can't please everyone, and Nintendo know that, and I think they've made the right move with this. I know that you were perhaps concerned that it wouldn't appeal outside of Japan. Do you still have those concerns, or do you think that it could do a Pokemon?
I certainly think that this is going to be a much more slam dunk in the Japanese market. I
Yeah.
think Western audiences may be a little confused by it because, well, honestly, at the moment, neither of us really have an idea what it actually does. I don't think Nintendo have fully explained like the idea behind it. If they have, I haven't seen anyone break it down comprehensively enough for me to understand. But in Japan, like these sort of social apps where you know, buy stickers and like have this interaction on your phone. Very, very popular one is called Line, which is just huge in Japan. Like everyone uses it, and it's this huge deal. This sort of thing, using those same type of hooks and making it free to download, and then adding in, microtransactions for like cosmetic stuff and that sort of stuff. You can imagine with the Mii, like costumes and hats and like, different things that relate to Nintendo that you can buy for them to make them look
Yeah.
better and all that stuff. I think this is going to be really big thing in Japan. Like it is going to do gangbusters over there, but I think it may stand out as a little too Japanese in a Western market, which is my fear for like if they want something that's going to hit worldwide, this might not be it. But I guess we'll have to see if we pick up on it or not.
But
if
it certainly
America and Europe do.
feels like the right direction to test the water. This is the first time Nintendo have ever released a game that's not on one of their systems, or
Yes.
one of their hardware systems, and that's just groundbreaking in and of itself. So I think they just want to be careful, and I'm looking forward to giving it a go now. I whether that's for 5 minutes or a few hours, I don't know, but I look forward to downloading it for free, hopefully, and then seeing what happens with it.
Yeah, people have been talking about it like it's basically a social app in the same way that Tinder is a social app
Yeah.
in some senses, and I've seen lots of references to that, which I don't know how that'll pan out or not. But it's certainly it's different. like Nintendo said, you're not going to expect what we're going to put out there, and I will put my hand up and say, no, I never would have expected that. And that's in many senses like the reason we love Nintendo is because they just do shit that no one could predict. I think one of the unfortunate sides of this is that their stock took a massive tanking after this announcement. Bloomberg reported that they lost $4.5 billion in value as a result of this announcement, which on one hand you can say that's terrible, but on the other hand you can also say stockholders are fucking stupid and they only want short-term gains, so that's all they care about. For the long term, I think Nintendo will be just fine regarding this. It's also because they announced that it was going to be delayed. This was supposed to be out before the end of this year, and now they have delayed it to March 2017.
Yeah.
So
it makes you wonder what shareholders were expecting for this stock to fall that much.
I think shareholders were expecting them to do a side-scrolling Mario game that was like auto-scrolling or some shit like that. And they're like, oh, Mario's going to sell millions of things. But again, we reiterate, shareholders are just fucking stupid. And they only care about, the instant gratification. So that's why things are going down, unfortunately. But yeah, it's something that is the start of this new path that they're going down, and it makes sense in the way that they may be trying to bring people in to their network and their account system, because this isn't really a game, it's more of like, as an app, it's something that you're going to have to make an account for, and therefore you're going to be tied into this for the rest of Nintendo's products. So it's kind of a way to get people in the door. With it also being free, it means that people have no barrier to entry to try it out. So they get in, they make an account, that account instantly is tied to then their Nintendo account system, and then to the My Nintendo stuff, which we'll talk about in a second, which seems like a smart thing to do. And it allows them to kind of build this user base without having to try and force people into downloading a game that they may not want to play. So
I'm intrigued to see the first of my friends who don't have any interest in video games to be playing this and be shocked. I want to see. I want to see if I just overlook their shoulder and I just see them fiddling with this thing on their phone, and I'm just like, oh my god, Nintendo have cracked through. Like, I'm excited to see if something like that happens, and it might not happen in the UK or Europe. It might happen in the United States or Canada or somewhere. It might be far more successful in certain groups and societies, cultures than others. But we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of reminds me, like you saying, like, oh, look over their shoulder and see someone playing that. It's like back in the Wii era, where out of nowhere you'd hear like two people having a conversation about this Nintendo thing that, like, back in the GameCube days, no one gave a shit because it's like video games, but it penetrated this new market, and they may be able to do that again. Who knows? So we'll keep an eye on that. Obviously, you're going to have to wait until next year to get it, and we'll also have to wait until next year to get Nintendo's new account system, which, of course, being developed by DNA as well, and it's very simply called Nintendo Account. Which, look, sometimes you don't need fancy names. Sometimes you just need to tell it as it is.
Do we know that's a final name?
I don't know if it's a final name, but that's what they're referring to it as of this time. So it's called Nintendo Account. It will connect hardware users as well as PC and smart device users, according to Mr. Kimishima. And so this is basically a unifying of all of Nintendo's stuff. Apparently there is going to be some sort of cloud system that allows you to transfer account data across. Now, they said data. We don't know yet if this means save data, which is what I think we care about, right? Is like having it on the go and also at home. It kind of shows images of Link and Isabelle from Animal Crossing and Mario, and some people have been suggesting that maybe it's something to do with like character data that could be transferred and not necessarily save data for games, which is a little worrying, but hopefully that they get that sorted out, because that is kind of the thing I care about. And they've also announced that it's very easy to make an account. If you have a Nintendo Network ID already LinkedIn, basically. You can just use that, and your new account will link in. You can use Twitter, Facebook, Google+, emails, whatever. They seem to be making it as easy as possible to get people to have a Nintendo account. I think this also ties into Miitomo in the sense that if you're on your phone, more than likely you're logged into your Facebook, you're logged into your Twitter. It can ping those and be like, okay, do you want to use these to create an account with Nintendo? And as such, they get a very simple, very easy way of accumulating users without having them to go through this horrible process of making an account. Bally, what do you think of all this?
It's exciting, and it's exactly what is needed. The second everyone started talking about, NX being handheld and home console, the idea of shifting around hard copies of games between the handheld and home console, or whether it is data storage, it's all quite clunky, and something like cloud storage is just so much better for something like that, where you don't have to worry about bringing the right things with you, or your device filling up. You just buy Nintendo games and play them, and you're cutting out the problem in the middle. And I'm really interested in this idea that it does link to your smart devices and things like that, because does that mean you think you might be able to manage your files or your games on your computer? Because you can already access Miiverse on your computer. If they go further and you can start managing buying games away from the systems and things like that, you can. And on top of that, with these new mobile games, there will be so many people who will have accounts, have access on the computer to managing those accounts that might not even own an NX or a Wii U or a 3DS or whatever. And
right, exactly.
It's a great way of just getting them in for free and then drawing them in, enticing them. But for those who are already going to own all the systems like we are, just an easy way of managing files, games, whatever. I hope that it works, and that we're able to do that from a computer like Miiverse at the moment.
Yeah, I'm certain we'll be able to do stuff like that. I think they confirmed that you will be able to buy stuff on a store online. Now, you can kind of do this already. There is a workaround that you can buy stuff through the browser. There's a way to access the eShop through a browser. It's a kind of weird back-end thing, but you can do it. I think it's official, but they don't really publicize it, and it only works for certain things, but you can buy stuff and have it automatically start downloading on your system at home. I heard, cool. I think James Charlton talked about doing this on the Famicast. But yeah, people are able to do it with certain things. But they are kind of confirming now that, yeah, that's going to be kind of an across-the-board thing. So say you're coming home from work and you get on your phone, you want to download the new Mario Kart just as it's coming out that day, hit a button, and it starts downloading while you're on the train back. That sort of thing is really cool, and something that needs to be there because we live in the year 2015, and god damn it, this is how technology is these days. So, certainly good stuff.
And if they sync that all with the new point program...
Well, yes, that is the next point that we're going to get to, is Nintendo's new replacement for the previously Club Nintendo named program. Now, someone was saying that they did have a system called My Nintendo before Club Nintendo came into being. This might have been what we used back when Europe was doing this stuff, because Europe has been doing the Club Nintendo stuff for way longer than any other region.
Really?
And back in the day, yeah. It properly only started for North America, around the start of the Wii. For Club Nintendo, and that's when they rebranded stuff. I think we might have had what was previously called My Nintendo in Europe, and that's why we had to do all that shit with making new accounts and forgetting to move stuff about. Because I remember having an account back in the day and then trying to log into it and not being able to, and having to make a new one, all that stuff. So, in any case, it's now called My Nintendo, which, fine, perfectly okay name, don't have any problem with that. And apparently we will be able to accumulate points in two ways now. So not only if you purchase games will you get a code or whatever, or just have it linked in to automatically give you points. Actually, this is probably the most interesting thing, is whether they're going to get rid of the whole code nonsense, and whether it's just going to be okay, if you buy a thing, we know you've bought it now because of our account, and therefore it just adds it to a thing instead of filling out 2 million surveys of bollocks that no one cares about.
Encourage people to buy digital games by giving you only get the code if you get the digital game or something. Like that's the only way to get it. I mean, maybe that's completely throwing it in the
might be a bit
throw it
harsh.
in the face of the retailers. So,
Yeah.
but I don't know. There must be a better way than codes. Nintendo and codes, like friend codes, codes for
They
Star.
love codes.
They just love codes. Mario courses on Mario Maker. It's like, oh, codes.
Yep. It's all about codes.
Long codes.
But anyway, we can get points not just by buying the games, Bally, but apparently by playing them. And they haven't really said what this means. Does this mean you can just spend 100 hours on a game and therefore you get a thing? Interestingly, NVC brought up this point, and they were like, wait a second, you can easily break that if you like just leave your game system going overnight and just have it accumulate hours with you not actually doing anything. So that might not be...
Why would it be based on time spent, though? That would be a
I don't
strange
know.
way.
I don't know. It's a metric, you know. They need some sort of metric, but it could also potentially mean that they are opening themselves up to a achievement or trophy type system. But in this case, it actually fucking matters because if I'm honest, Bally, like achievements, trophies, great. You know, people like to get them, but they are bragging rights and bragging rights alone. Like they don't do anything. Great. You have a digital thing that's shiny. Okay, it doesn't do anything for me personally. I know there are people who love them. I appreciate that. But for me personally, like, there's no reason for me to do it at all. If there is a tangible reason, as in I am getting stuff out of it, like physically, either with merchandise or digital stuff or discounts, which is the three things they've said they're going to do, that sounds way better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm skeptical about how many of the points you're getting by playing the games versus purchasing the games. I'm worried that the points you get from playing the games might be as small of a fraction as you got for writing the reviews and things, and how you sometimes get points for submitting reviews and all that kind of thing. So I'm worried that it's going to be a tiny portion, and that so few people will bother going for these so-called achievements because the stars or whatever new currency, the coins you get for the points for the other stuff is they're going to be so minimal. I hope that you get something substantial if you do 100% some game.
Yeah, no, it kind of does need some sort of incentive there, because if it is these tiny dribbles, then sure, I mean, it's better than Xbox and PlayStation version because you're getting something for doing it right, but it's still like maybe not enough of an incentive for people to go out of their way. It's interesting. I wonder also if they do this and if they apply this, does that mean that they then retroactively go back and apply it to older games? Like dig into the Virtual Console catalog and be like, okay, let's make an achievement or whatever for Link to the Past, where if you beat it in under 2 hours, you get this certain amount of stuff. That could be really cool, like retroactively going back and saying, okay, we have these old games and people played them in certain ways back then just because they had nothing else they owned and they would just do crazy speedruns and all this shit. If we actually attach some significance to that with this kind of system, that would make a lot of sense and it would be really cool. So...
Yeah, like I'm intrigued to see how they're going to do this, because there's a million ways that they could divide up a game and how you play it and how you get points based on some segment or another, and some sort of speedrunning element I think would be awesome in almost any game.
Yeah, I think the way they've kind of combined things here with taking Club Nintendo, but also taking the Digital Deluxe program from Wii U, where you got discounts, coupons for spending a certain amount of money. They've just kind of rolled it all into one here, so that when you buy stuff, when you play stuff, you will get access to, if you want physical merchandise, you got that, because I know a lot of people clamor for their statues. If you want digital stuff, you want to download games, you want 3DS themes, whatever, you got that covered. And then if you want discount stuff, that's there as well. It seems like they've thought of all bases and covered them under one umbrella. And now everything is under one umbrella, right? Because the account system, the points program, this new mobile stuff, it's all interlinked, and it's all being made by a company in DNA who probably have way more experience in engineering this stuff than Nintendo do, and are going to put out something that is manageable and understandable and not a fucking mess. Because I think we can both agree that when it comes to that sort of stuff, Nintendo more often than not trip over themselves and fail to land it.
Yeah, and I think that's the most reassuring thing about all these announcements is that this is Nintendo taking a firm step into the future, and it is them accepting that some things in the current market are selling far better than others, most notably mobile games and handheld games, and they've said, right, we're going to have a system that unifies all our games, all the account systems, all this sort of thing, making having the cloud will hopefully unify it all so easily and seamlessly. And they're saying this is the new product, the new service we want to put before you, and we're not going to be so entrenched in the old ways of buying games in the traditional ways and not being on mobile devices, which is just so important now. So Mitomo, I'm not that excited personally about it, but I'm excited that it could potentially be a moneymaker. And yeah, like I said, the cloud stuff, it's exciting. It's hopefully, like everyone always says, Nintendo are years and years in the past. I think they're slightly behind on all this stuff, perhaps, especially compared to PlayStation and Xbox. But I think they're less far behind than they normally are with something like this.
Oh, definitely, yeah, and they make strides ahead in other areas as well. We talk about like how amazing the Nintendo Direct is and how much of a step to the future that is, they also started embracing day one digital downloads for all of their AAA titles, which was being done before even Sony had started doing that for everything. So they make steps when they need to, and I think this was one that they really needed to make. So. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. I think like one of the other things that we haven't mentioned yet, apparently one of their plans for the future is that they're going to branch out into lifestyle space services, which means theme parks, movie theaters, and retail outlets. Does that mean that like when you go to those Nintendo rides at the Universal theme parks that you're going to get some points to your account for going on those? Does that mean when you see a movie that Nintendo produces, like I'm interested in how that links into the membership service, because that's what they were talking about it in relation to. So
yeah, I think it's just that a general. They have some very well recognized successful characters, most notably Mario and Pokemon, and they want to try and get them out of just video games, I guess. They want to get them in, like they've said, theme parks, movies, this kind of thing. And I've always thought, having been to the Nintendo World Store and knowing the success of Disney stores around the world, I think like expanding Nintendo stores, I think is an awesome thing that I hope they would do in the future.
yeah, that I mean it's weird because it's such like it's like a mecca. The Club Nintendo store.
Yeah.
It's this one thing that only people who live around that area can access, unless like you pay however much to get on a plane and go over there. And I've been there once, which luckily when I was in New York we managed to go there. But it would be nice for them to expand that space out a bit more and get more of a presence in a retail space. Not only because it could be profitable for them in some senses, but also like it's good recognition for the layman on the street. To build up that idea in their head of Nintendo as this company that is not only in games but also has all this merchandise and does stuff at theme parks and everything.
I'm sure London could be a prime candidate for another Nintendo shop.
Oh, absolutely. If you're talking about big cities, then that's probably the next one on the list. So we'll see. Maybe that'll happen. Maybe it won't. It's all exciting times, Valley, as we said before. Like, yes, it's slow at the moment. Yes, like the state of the holiday is kind of disgustingly bad. But we just need to stay strong. We need to push through. We need to wait till next year. And next year, fireworks are going to pop off. It's when the magic's going to happen.
True. And hey, I've got way too much to play. I'm not complaining.
I know. Yeah, look, we have enough to play. Also, Xenoblade is the only thing we need to care about this holiday.
What a nice little buffer that is for these
right.
lack of releases. Just to stick Xenoblade X in there, and that'll fill up the time nicely.
It will indeed. All right, well, I think that's pretty much going to close out the show for this week. Bally, why don't you tell the fine folks where they can find you on the internet?
Please follow me on Twitter. I'm at Ballyman91. I love posting about lots of random things. I'm sure I'll post more about Brussels life and what I'm getting up to over here. And that's
Indeed.
also my name on the Miiverse, so do follow me on there. I'll be posting hopefully a bit more Rayman and hopefully getting back into Mario Maker.
Yeah, I've been working on a Mario Maker level. I was in fact late for our recording session because I was sitting here trying to make one in preparation for the new update that comes out next week. So very excited to dig into more of that stuff. You can find me on Miiverse at Lordnbz and Lordnbz on the Twitter as well. Bally, where can people send us emails? Because that's the thing, we need to fill up that inbox a bit more.
Yes, please send all your emails to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That's ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. And also follow the TNL Twitter account, which is at TNL Podcast. That's at TNL Podcast. Lots of things to follow and email to and everything. So yeah, go check out all those things.
Indeed. You can also go over to iTunes, give us a little bit of a review. Bally, we have some reviews recently from different parts of the world, different places, and we're going to read one of those out today. So yeah, let's give some recognition to people who have been so kind to review us.
So this review is 5 stars from Wim in Australia, who said that the podcast is fun and entertaining. He says, amazing show, very topical for us Nintendo fans, but also branches out into other genres from a Nintendo fan's perspective. Entertaining, comical, and to top it all off, British accents. I rest my case.
Well, that's a good case, well made, my friend. So yeah, if you want your review read out on the show, then do hop over onto iTunes and give us one. We'd really appreciate it, and let us know what you think about the podcast. Of course, you can get this place on You can get this show on iTunes. That's a place you can download it. You can also find us on Stitcher. You can find us on YouTube. We are in many places. Just subscribe, and it will come to your phone or device that you listen to podcasts on. Yeah, it's going to wrap us up. We'll be back in another couple of weeks' time with some more chat about all the Nintendo things that are happening in the world. Until then, thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you in a bit. Goodbye. The musical interludes used in today's show were the main theme of Sonic Heroes, with my voice in the middle of it saying Triforce because Bally thought that was a good idea. Also, the title theme from The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes. Copyright Nintendo 2015. Hello everyone and welcome to This Nintendo Life. My name is NBZ and this is episode 52. We're here, we're ready, we're stoked, and we are only two of a 3-part. What am I saying? I was trying to do the Triforce Heroes thing. Oh god, I'm so bad at this. Oh no.
I think that Super Mario Maker levels would frequently have that problem.
Problem.
I think my voice has a problem right now. I cannot get this sentence out. Problem.
Mummy, I have a problem.
The way I'm tackling... No, this is funny. The way I'm tackling this sentence is exactly the same as you would tackle a Super Mario Maker level. I'm thinking so much about the bit I'm going to trip up on that I'm failing on the bit beforehand.
Yeah, exactly. God.